interference here.
Yeah, does sound like that.
Okay.
What about that? Is that better? Okay, good.
It doesn't sound like you've been screaming at a concert all night.
I have been doing presentations with the principals. Okay. And you're here mostly for the evaluation, principal evaluation system, right? Okay, let's talk about that, and then I'll take questions. I'm going to share a few slides that I used with the principals. We'd had training all day yesterday, and this morning we trained on the principal evaluation system. So one of the things I asked them right off the bat is what percentage of HISD principals are proficient? And the answer from most of them is what it factually is, it's well above 90% are proficient. In fact, all principals are proficient unless they're being non-renewed. So that's a large percentage of principals. And then the question is really this one: how do you know when a person is proficient or an effective principal? So that's the context by which we started today's training. How do you know when a principal is effective? It's kind of like that movie from Moneyball, or the Moneyball movie, where the coach is saying, can he hit? And they're trying to, his staff is trying to hire, the scouts are trying to hire people who don't have a great batting average, but there's all kinds of other variables that they think are good. And what's his name? Brad Pitt, is it? Who says, if he's such a good hitter, why doesn't he hit good? So we're going to figure out how well our principals can lead a school building. The other conceptual concept, or the concept that I want you to think about, is what's on the screen. An organization can't maximize its effectiveness if what it values is disconnected from how it compensates people. So those two things together, this plus how do you know when somebody is effective, is kind of the conceptual underpinnings of the principal evaluation system. And I know I always start with concept because I think that's the best way to build a strong foundational system. So let's get into it. What are we going to identify as effective for our principals? And basically, for this year, it comes down to 4 big areas. One is student achievement. So you can't be a great principal or an effective principal if you don't get outcomes. And then we can debate what the outcomes are, but that's one portion of a principal's evaluation, 35%. We're going to break that down a little bit here. The second big part is the quality of instruction. That's a leading indicator. I think I've talked to you about that before. Leading indicator for your achievement score is how well the classroom operates and how effective that teacher is. So that's a big portion, as you can see, of the principal's evaluation system. Eventually, we're going to talk about teachers, not today, but it's also a big part of the teacher's evaluation system. And then you have the action plan. That is a very specific plan that outlines 5 or 6 key actions that principals need to take this year. There'll be indicators of success tied to those actions, and they will be evaluated on that. That's 15%. And then finally, because our second big area for exiting the intervention is special education, we have that as part of the principal's evaluation, at least for the next 3 or 4 years. So special education is 20% of a principal's evaluation this coming school year. So those are the big areas. I'll break it down a little bit for you. Here's on the achievement. It's 35%, but it's broken down with NWA and STAR data. Can you see that? Yeah. So NWA is the NWA MAP assessments. STAR data, you understand the accountability score. That's that overall score for a school. And STAR also has a closing the achievement gap score. We use that for 5%. That accounts for 35% of the evaluation system. The orange piece is the quality of instruction, the green piece is the action plan, and then you have the SPED 2 components. So I said 20% is special education, 10%, so half of that is student achievement for special education. How the special education students grow academically. Okay, are you guys getting this at all, or is it still too echoey, huh?
Started breaking up like a minute ago.
Oh, okay. Sorry about the technical. How's this? Better? Okay. So maybe we do that in the future. All right, so the other 10% is special ed compliance. And what I mean by that is, are we writing good IEPs? Are we writing those IEPs in a timely manner? Are we progress monitoring those IEPs? Are we doing our evaluations early so that we identify the students who have to be, who should be placed in special services? So that's the compliance piece, achievement and compliance. Basically, that's what our evaluation system, obviously there's a lot of detail, but you have the big picture for special education. Finally, this is probably the most controversial piece. You're going to hear it in the teacher eval when we get to that. Remember, teacher evaluation starts a year from now, not next year, except for the NES schools. But the target distribution is one of the things that's probably the most controversial. The principals took it very well. They seem to understand it. They seem to understand why it there should be a target distribution. So what you see on the screen, I don't have to read it for you, is how the evaluations will break out. Exemplary 2, we can talk about some other time. Nobody will be exemplary 2 right off the bat because you have to be exemplary 1 at least 1 year. So you'll have 5% of the principals will be exemplary, 20% will be what we call proficient 2, more than proficient, 40% will be proficient, 22% will be progressing 2, that's what the PROG stands for, and 10% will be progressing 1. There'll be a small percentage, very small, that will be unsatisfactory. But I don't want to assume that, but most likely.
Sorry, sir, we're getting some kind of interference, so I think the best hold is a podium mic for now.
Okay, I'm going to be a captive to the podium, then that's okay. At least you'll get the information right. All right, so that's the target distribution. The other part of this, so you can have an evaluation system, but then you really should tie your compensation to it, right? That's the first, that quote at the beginning, no school can maximize its effectiveness. So we can have an evaluation system, we can stop. We can have the regular compensation like we always have had. The most effective and aligned way to do it is to tie the compensation to the evaluation. So basically, this is the draft compensation. Actually, all of it is draft. There may be some small tweaks as we go along this summer, but this is basically the compensation system for the principal evaluation system. So once they're evaluated, so not right now, right? It's at the end of our evaluation system for this coming year. That's the principal compensation, APs, and then there's 3 stipends. One is the size of school stipend. I think most of you can agree that if you're a principal of a large high school, that's a little bit different and way more responsibility and work than for a small elementary school. So size of school matters, and so we're going to pay a stipend for that. The second stipend is the experience stipend. experience after the first couple of years or after the first 3 years for administrators does not matter that much, meaning there's not as much difference between a 10th year principal and a 20-year principal. But the research is pretty clear that the first couple of years does matter, that if you haven't been a principal before, it does matter how effective you will be. So that's the experience stipend, and then finally, for at least the next couple of years, we have the high needs school stipend. So you see NES there, and then other DRF schools. We are saying here that it's going to be tough in the NES schools and the DNF schools, and so we want to compensate people for the level of difficulty it will require. So we talked a lot about how it will be different then, what will they have to do to make sure that they're succeeding on the principal evaluation system and the new metrics. That training for how to support them on doing well started about an hour ago. We're going to train them on the quality of instruction, how to improve it, how to coach teachers, how to improve SPED achievement, how to work with the district on SPED performance and compliance, etc. And they've got this. The last day and a half has been great, talking to the principals, training them, showing them the vision. I think overall my impression is that the principals are ready for a change. They needed information, and once we gave them a lot of information, anxiety went down. It's like I said to y'all before, whenever there's going to be change, people know there's going to be change, but there's an absence of information. That just causes anxiety, a climate of anxiety, and in some cases fear. So the best remedy is to give them, information, show them what sort of supports they will get. That's what we did yesterday and today. And the anxiety level went down, and the principals are going to do a good job. Who has the first question?
I just wanted to check on the time frame of all of this. So are these raises going into effect before the start of the school year? And then when do you start with teachers? Kind of how long do these things take?
Yeah, so the principal, for the principal eval, we evaluate all year. Once they get, once they get a rating, then they get paid the following year based on their evaluation.
So we're talking about the next school year.
Right.
Basically.
Right, because we haven't evaluated them, and we will take all, to answer your question, then we'll take all year to evaluate the principals on the evaluation system. And then the teachers' evaluation starts at the beginning of the 24-25 school year. So they're not going to get paid differently until the end of that 24-25 school year. You follow me?
Got it. So they have a full year evaluation also?
Yes. They have a full year of evaluation also, except that it doesn't start till a year from now, except the NES schools, and we can talk about that some other time. I'm sorry, I'm going to let him do that.
Okay, what does NES stand for, just so I'm clear?
New Education System Schools.
Okay, and are those principals going to get extra training beyond what the other principals get?
Yes. So they'll be getting some training this summer, but the biggest training for them will also happen the week before the teachers get here. So there's training for principals on the July 31st and August 1st for all principals. And then the NES principals have a couple more days after that week. And then they will train with us, with the teachers in the NES schools, the week of the 7th. So they will be getting more training, yes.
I'll get a mic. Will it work? Last week, I interviewed a couple of teachers after the meeting you had with them. A couple of teachers from some of the NES campuses say, you know, we love the idea of making more money, but you can't just throw money at problems. Discipline was among their concerns. How do you address discipline issues and especially these 30 campuses?
Yeah, I want to be clear that we're not just throwing money at a problem. The system that we've designed is based on that concept of let's make sure we pay for effectiveness, we pay for competence, we pay for what we value, and we should pay well. So all teachers should have an $80,000 average salary today. That's what it should be. And we could just throw money at that, but that wouldn't even come close to achieving what we want to achieve, which is high quality instruction. So while I agree that people should have more money, it comes with accountability and excellence of performance, because that's what our kids need. So the money will be good, but there's another side of that. That is high performance culture, high quality instruction, and accountability. That's what they're getting for that value. Not all teachers will want to do that, and not all teachers can do that. So that's why we're interviewing everybody. We're going to have a performance interview, and those we think can do it are the ones we'll hire, and obviously they'll want to do it if they volunteer to go through an interview. To answer your discipline problem, the discipline part of your question, yes, so discipline is a kind of a separate question than the evaluation system, and I've addressed it elsewhere. In those NES schools, discipline will be tighter, but the principals and APs and the teachers still have to do what great teachers do. Still have to build a relationship with kids, still have to work with parents, still have to make sure that they're not sending kids out of class for rolling their eyes or doing, things like that, because that's what kids do. So there will still be that. I guess the big difference, though, is for some kids who are disruptive in class, we'll be moving them out of class, and then they'll be zooming right back into class in the NES schools. We'll still get to the root cause of why a child is misbehaving, but that's a temporary solution so that teachers can teach and get to that high-quality instruction that all teachers want to do.
Talking about money, can you talk to us a little bit about where this funding is coming from, and will it be able to be sustained when these teachers and principals get these pay raises long term?
No question. So, two things. Right now, there's a staffing model and there's a way of operating in the various schools and in the district as a whole that's not as effective and efficient as it can be. It's not prioritized. So when you prioritize instruction, there are some things that have to fall off the plate. And we put that money into instruction and the teachers. That's one level. The second is, I've already talked to you about central office inefficiencies. We have a central office that's too high. That's not just me, right? The past administrations have talked about the same thing. They've tried to cut down on central office inefficiencies. I'm not sure they had as an effective plan as we have, where we use the unit concept to push supports to the schools. Much more effective in supporting them, also much more cost effective. So we'll have savings there as well. The third big area, you're going to hear some of this on the 15th at the board workshop on the budget, is we have a number of vendors. Actually, we have too many vendors. And we can't have vendors on the field. I may have said that before, meaning this. There's a role for vendors and consultants. We can't get by. We're too big a district to get by without any vendors and any consultants. But I cannot have vendors on the field telling the wide receiver or lineman how to line up, what route to run. And right now you have vendors and others who are telling teachers how to teach, and then telling principals, a different group telling principals how to coach, and it is not aligned. And I'd rather have the experts be the principals, the executive directors, so that it's all lined up. That's what I mean by on the field. Principal coaches teachers, not somebody else coaching teachers, and we're going to save some money that way too.
Just so I'm clear on this, it sounds like you're trying to get money from other departments that you think may have been misused prior for this funding?
I don't know, misuse is not the right word. Everybody has a job and everybody is doing the job. The question is, can you prioritize your work so that you focus on the things that you really need to get done to have high quality instruction. That means some things have to fall away. Okay, so that's slightly different from the vendor question, but because I'm saying we have some vendors who are on the field, and we're just going to eliminate that group and put the principal and APs in charge of high quality instruction.
We have time for about 2 more questions. I'm going to get Sam. Go ahead.
With the trainings that are going on, could you talk about kind of what specifically you're training these principals in, and who is leading these trainings, and then also with the new salary structure for the principals and the rating system? You mentioned that formerly it was like over 90% were proficient, and it's going to be much less. Will there be any implications for someone for their ranking falling beyond compensation, like will anyone be in danger of losing their jobs, anything like that?
Okay, so the first question about the trainings. So yesterday, I was the main trainer. We spent most of the time talking about the vision and the priority work areas. So of our action plan, the district level plan, Destination 2035. So talked a lot about that, answered a lot of questions, allayed a lot of fears. I think the principals appreciated the transparency and the clarity of the vision and how we get there. So that was the morning part. Then we talked about climate and culture and core beliefs, which may seem as not as focused on instruction, but you have to have the good culture and good core beliefs to do this work because it's transformative. So that was part of the discussion. And then we talked about, today we talked about the evaluation system. Right now, while you're here with me, they're talking about what does quality of instruction look like? What does it mean? How do you get it, specifically? And then we'll do a little bit more of that today. Tomorrow we have special education training. So that, again, we're talking about how we support the principals. We have training on annotations and short constructed responses. Those are how we help schools and students write and annotate. We also have a session on new education system for some of those folks who want to apply. As a principal, that's later today. So it's about the work. I probably should have started with that without all the detail. It's about the work of being a principal and being an effective school. That's what the trainings are about. And we have the last day of training on Tuesday. And then we'll have more training at the end of the summer.
Yes, my question is, what are you doing, if anything, early in your tenure to kind of hear from these communities that no longer have this sense of geographic representation for a board member in the way that they used to?
So I'm not sure I understand the question exactly. So
Yeah, with the way that districts were outlined before, where each single member district essentially had a person who's a part of that community, and now that is not the case. Or you have some communities where changes are happening, there isn't a representation in a board member who actually is a part of that community. Is there anything that you guys are doing to kind of hear the needs of those communities without having board members that are a part of them?
yeah, I can tell you what I'm doing and what the administration and the leadership teams are doing. As far as the board members, I believe, but please ask them, I believe they're available and they have a process for any parent in the district, because they're at large, to voice concerns or grievances or get their questions answered. We still have principals, teachers, we have a system in the regular schools, the district, where parents who have a concern about their school can approach the parent advisory committee, they can approach the principal, they can approach the executive directors. That process hasn't changed. So if you're local, you have a concern in a local area, that's the process you should use first before you go to the board member anyway, even if the board members were representative of any one area. I'm sorry I couldn't answer as much on the board side, but that's the process on the school side.
Yeah, I guess maybe more so as to like the takeover as a whole and the changes that are being implemented more broadly, not so much a concern that can be handled internally, but just in getting to know the community and that sort of thing. I just wondered if there's any outreach that has been happening or anything like that.
Well, so yes, a lot already by both the board and myself. I mean, I've been talking to you guys a lot, but I've spoken on the radio with lots of constituents already with questions. I've talked to teachers already. Last Friday, we had 170 people in this room, 500 people online. We have FAQs going out. Talked to lots of principals, of course. I've had one-on-one conversations with key stakeholders and groups, small groups. Boards have been doing, our board has been doing similar things. And this is like day 4 or 5. So we've got a whole summer where we're going to be doing that outreach. Thank you, guys. I think I just take this. All righty.